We are starting this series of podcasts to discuss the shifting international orders, and it will pave the way to a reshuffling of international orders or emerging the new one. And what does it mean for the security of Europe and the Western Balkans? We're going to invite experts, scholars, researchers to discuss this emerging the situation in the international system and what it means for the security of the Western Balkans. I'm Adilina Hassani, a researcher in geopolitical and security issues. And today with us, we have Viktoriia Voronina from the Center for Security Studies from Kyiv. And she's our friend and colleague from Ukraine. So today we're going to discuss about Russian influence in the Western Balkans and especially the war in Ukraine. And we try to understand what is the tactic and strategy that Russia used to increase its influence. But most importantly, what was the strategies and tactics that Russia has used before the war in Ukraine. So we're going to dive in this discussion. But before that, first of all, Viktoriia, thank you very much. I'm very happy to start this very first podcast with you. And also how we can tie our cooperation with Ukraine. But before that, I want to start with the very first question. When the war started in Ukraine, for all of us, people in Kosovo, it was just organically to be in solidarity with people there, because our memory, our war memory, are very fresh, and with all the atrocities that happened here. And it was so organically to support Ukraine. So it's your third time in Kosovo, and I want just to hear from your experience. What is your experience being in Kosovo and its people?
Yes, thank you very much for invitation, and I am very happy to be here, to be in Kosovo for the third time. And my next time is better and better than my previous time in this country. I don't know, maybe we can add some fun in this serious conversation about security, but I had very good conversation with border officer during this time who asked me, you come to Kosovo so often, for what reason actually? Do you have friends here? So I think I already have friends here. And thank you again for this fruitful cooperation and for inviting me. And actually, every time I meet with Kosovo people, I feel this support, I feel this warmth, I feel this energy and this sharing the feelings that we feel now in Ukraine. And, again, to be more fun here, sometimes I think if I just say that I'm from Ukraine, I think a lot of doors will open for me here, Yeah. Thank you very much for welcoming me so warm and so friendly in your country.
Yeah, I hope we're going to have even more possibilities with your people to have close cooperations. I want to switch a bit topic maybe. We can maybe dive in a bit about this current situation that is going on in Ukraine. And if there is a possibility to strike a deal with Russia, I mean, it's more important for us to understand if Russia is really interested to have a peace deal with Ukraine, and what does it mean for Ukraine?
Now in Ukraine, we have very difficult situation in the east, in the northeast, in Sumy region, in Kharkiv region, of course in Donetsk region, but now Sumy is one of the hotspots for this war. And actually Russia, I think, is playing with us with the same tactics as it was during our Minsk negotiation process. And during this time, during last month, with different rounds of negotiation between Russia and US, or US and Ukraine, or European Union or other European countries with Ukraine or with US, they sometimes made this distance to have an opportunity to say everything was discussed without us, or we could not be a part of such discussion or something like that, because we had the same during Minsk negotiation process. So sometimes Russia likes to shift their attention to other area. For example, if we take an experience from Minsk, they put a lot of attention to humanitarian assistance or to humanitarian issues, but not to political or economic, for example. Yeah. We know a lot of proposals from Russia of different peace plans that was submitted to different politicians, not only from Russian, but from other countries. You can find in internet Artemenko plan, peace plan, or peace plan that was published in the journal National Interest, or Italian, so-called Italian plan. Every time Russia trying to put there some elements of recognition, so-called republics or autonomies, or keeping Crimea under occupation, or pushing the idea of federalization of different territories. So I think it cannot be some like equal or good deal with Russia, and they use all opportunity to play games with us, to avoid some responsibility, to avoid some truly real deal. And even now we see that US is somehow disappointed with Russia behavior in this area. So it's very tricky question, very tricky issue, and it's very difficult to reach any agreement with Russia.
But what it means for Ukraine, like we are talking about the victory of Ukraine, what does it mean?
All Ukrainians want to have our state, sovereign state, within the borders that we have in 2091. And we want to show Europe and show the whole world that our country could be resistant, and we can block the influence of such big, crazy enemy like Russia. So the victory is to save our country and to become more recognizable by Western world, that we are part of Europe, that we are part of EU, that we are part of Western world with Western values, with democracy, with our ties with Europe. So we are not belong to Russia. We don't want to be in their camp of post-Soviet countries. We want to be closer to Europe. And actually our first revolution of dignity in 2013 was about the same. And our people came to Maidan, to the square, and showed that they want to be closer to EU. Now we have the same, but with arms in our hands, actually, and with support of EU, of course, and other Western world for us.
Especially this resistance of Ukrainian people. I think this was very important, how you should resist for your country. So I think many people learned from your example. But I want to focus a little bit, I mean, especially for our audience in the Western Balkans, to understand these tactics and strategy that Russia is using in Ukraine. But in general, I mean, if you're talking about the Russia and you're talking about the China, they know that they have these Malayan influences in the Western Balkans. And they are in a way challenging these international orders. So you see that especially in the Western Balkans, they are trying to hold, the integration process towards the NATO and also towards the European Union. So what we can learn from your example, and especially before the war, what were these tactics that Russia are amplifying in a way in Kosovo, but generally in the Western Balkans?
Russian influence never ended during all these years since Ukrainian independence. So it was more hard or less like soft, because they could be busy on some other issues in the world, but it was never ended. And actually Russia used the traditional concept of DIME, like abbreviation, diplomacy, information, military economy. Or it could be the concept of midlife, including law, including other component in this financial, etc. in this concept. But excluding military, they made a lot of efforts on diplomacy level and international level to show some weak places, weak spots in Ukrainian society, to show our country as a not like a fake state, actually, but very weak state. And to show that they are our hegemon in our territory and we should belong to them. They use a lot of economic ties with Ukrainian business that was before 2014. They use different heavy metallurgy and other economic areas to cooperate with Ukrainians. They use information, all information threads that could be used. Actually, it was played in Ukraine. I think one of the first country who read these threads, it was Ukraine. And they use all their activity, all their tools, Russian TV channels, Telegram, journalists, civic activists, political parties, I don't know what else, social media, groups of youth or other people. Everything was used and piloting, piloting in Ukraine during last 15 or 20 years. And all this experience could be used for Balkans country too, because now in Ukraine we have very good infrastructure of countering disinformation, very good infrastructure of monitoring, of fact-checking. We had very experienced journalists who can share such experience with Western Balkans too. If we are talking about economy, it could be different package of sanctions and sanction policy with identification threats, with identification network of different plants, factories, enterprises was engaged in this circle of shadow activity or malign activity, including different economic issues. Again, the crazy issue with the church, actually, Russian Orthodox Church that had so significant influence in Ukrainian society. And we finally, several years ago, in 2018 probably, we had our autonomy of our church, Ukrainian church, finally. And we had a lot of conflicts with Russian Orthodox Church and their leadership in dividing, community, our religious community, who will belong to what branch of churches. And actually, this issue is already set, but it was set with different criminal procedures, with engagement of our security service, because a lot of Russian religious leaders were spies, actually. In fact, with some ranks from military or FSB, not military, but FSB, with some ranks of FSB. So the issue of church, using of church, is so crucial, especially when a society have strong beliefs in some religions. Even during we have not conversation, but some lawsuit with Russia. It's almost the issue of manipulation. And they use a lot of, again, spies. They use the issue of language. By the way, the language is one of the key issues of their manipulation, because this concept of Russian world consists of religion, history, language, territory. And if they cannot find the territory that could be an issue for conflict or an issue for manipulation, it should be Russian-speaking population. It could be church, Russian church, or other ties that could be used in it, broadcasting different TV shows. Actually, during this period in Kosovo, we met with several experts that show us the same approach from Russia, like movies on Russian language with Albanian subtitles. Like, who is interested in Russian movies here in Kosovo, or why it started to appear? Or, for example, some videos on Instagram or TikTok from Russia series about police officers or some investigation with some funny stories that disseminated through Albanian population with Albanian subtitles again. So it's more and more penetrating in society with the groups of population who could be neutral or almost neutral to Russia, to some their media product. And Russia will start with something soft, with daily life, with something that was fun for people or some problems. They like to identify some root causes, some grassroots, some weaknesses among society, and they use it very targeted. They don't use the same, for example, movie or the same joke in Ukraine and in, in Belgium, for example, or in Kosovo, for example.
We know very well the society, how to use
they use this approach of examining society, researching, gathering intelligence information, or just like information about how life is organized in the country, and then select all of it.
Maybe just short comment on this, and then maybe to dive on this. There have been produced many reports in Kosovo, especially from the disinformation campaigns that is coming from Kremlin. And we saw that also during the last elections that we had in Kosovo. But all this disinformation campaign is more targeting the north part of Kosovo, where Serbs are living, and many disinformation campaign or fake news, if you can refer like that, are targeting the Serbian community, and they are trying to create the atmosphere in Kosovo that is not safe, that government of Kosovo is actually trying to expel Serbs from Kosovo. But the main target is Kosovo security. They want to portray Kosovo as a failed state. And maybe here we can make connection with Ukraine, because they want to show that Ukraine is a failed state. And in many cases, maybe if you can refer also here, is the case with religion. They want also to portray Kosovo with religious extremism, and that they probably how they are showing that in Ukraine, but also in the world. What is your take on this?
I absolutely agree with you, because religion is a key issue for Serbian population. I mean, Serbian people on the north of Kosovo. But at the same time, Russia used very flexible tools about religion since several years, like 2-3 years, starting using Kadyrov as a key person in providing good attitude towards Islam in different countries in Africa, for example, with different exchange of believers from country to country. And they organize different forums, they build mosques in different countries, including Africa countries, or I always use this experience from Crimea, there they built a mosque. So they could be flexible, they could adapt their activity or tools towards religion. So one side they could say on all diplomatic platforms that Kosovo is Islamic country, or you have extremism or terrorism here. But at the other side they could influence Islamic community with other tools. So everything should be kept in mind, you know. But another important thing about Russia, that they have the same people for, I don't know, dozens of years who are responsible for the same issue. For example, if we are talking about religious, the same person will be responsible for malign activity in religious area for all the world, or for some particular region, for example. Because we can compare different negotiation activity from Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, and Balkans, and it will be the same person who was responsible for all this track. The same with religion, the same with culture, the same with Russian TV channels, for example, or such entity like Россотрудничество. And people, if you check their CVs, or like, you know, like bio, they are the same for 20 years. So you can imagine how many knowledge they have. But it's not so common in our society. I mean, in Europe or Ukraine or Kosovo, because you have people who change from time to time, different government, and they change it, you know. And it could be from 0 point each 5 year or each 4 year. And Russians played with it every time. When you start some practicing of negotiation with them or dealing with them, you cannot know what they knew from previous periods, you know. So.
But especially in this disinformation campaign, just maybe to make a short comment, here the main target is also the KFOR and also the EU, because this was a huge support coming from them. And they, by targeting them, they are trying to say or to show that they are failed, they are not successful. And this is how, I mean, they are probably targeting as well as Ukraine, because Ukraine wants to be part of the Europe as well. I want to interlink with one other issue with minorities, because they want to target them in Kosovo. They want to show that Kosovo is not multi-ethnic country, because we aim to, I mean, Kosovo is multi-ethnic, and this is what we are committed. So it's trying to show that, and also using minority and instrumentalizing minority. Can we also see some parallels with Ukraine?
You know, if we see on Ukrainian situation, we cannot say like Russian-speaking population in Ukraine could be called like minorities, because it's like 30% of our society who still speak Russian in daily life or in their families. It could be like 50-50, like Russian and Ukrainian language in daily lives. But actually, the language is not very matter for our society. It was added artificially for our society from Russia with this all manipulation on language.
Right.
But they use it always. Always the language is an issue for Russian manipulation, Russian influence. Always they put the issue of language, for example, in all our negotiation documents, like recognition Russian language as a state language, or recognition Russian church, or recognition some ties. So it's a concept of Russian world, and they step by step implement it or want to implement it throughout the world. So if we are talking about minorities, it could be the issue of Russian language. Another issue is Crimean Tatars in Ukraine, because it's in majority, in general, they are Muslim population, and a lot of them moved from Crimea after the occupation. But a lot of Crimean Tatars organizations or groups was identified in Russia like terrorist organization, and they were captured. But for Ukraine, we recognize such people like political prisoners. But for Russia, they are terrorists, and they use this issue of Islam and Muslim population group like extremist group, etc. And they made a lot of efforts to identify all of them, to capture all of them. And it's very difficult to include such people in our exchange procedure, like of exchange of political prisoners or detainees, with this Muslim population. So what I cannot say like it's minority, especially about Russian-speaking people.
Yeah, I mean, it was more of understanding how Russia is using this Russian-speaking people in Ukraine and to increase its influence within Ukraine. So, I mean, that's the parallel that we can see also, especially in the case of Kosovo, and then also in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I want to go to our last question, actually. And it is what Ukraine victory would mean for the whole Europe, because now we are, as we started our conversation, it was like this shifting international orders, and now we are talking also for the security of Europe in general. So why it's important for Europe and Western Balkans to Ukraine to win?
I think it will mean that international law works actually throughout the world, and it will mean that democracy works still, despite of some attempts to to make more popular authoritarian leaders, like or some dictatorship elements of dictatorship. But democracy, we believe that democracy wins. And again, just to repeat that we want to show that we are part of Europe and we stand for European values in this war. So we would like to show the whole world that we stand not only for our country, but for all European democracies. Because if Russia occupied Ukraine, because Russia is not interested only in Donbass or only in Kharkiv, it's not the issue. Yeah, it has we have very good minerals, we have very good economy, we had very good logistics, just perfect for Europe and other parts of the world. But they have like two parts of their ideology. One is more pragmatic, and the second is more crazy from Putin and other people who surround him,
Yeah.
So that's why we think that we defend not only our country, but the whole Europe with European values and expectations.
Maybe just a short following question. After the war, how do you see that democracy will work in Ukraine? I mean, we can assume that's going to be very hard, because we're going to talk. We are talking about the society after the war, and how you assume, suspect that democracy going to work.
It will be a lot of challenges with normalization of the situation in Ukraine, like after we have ceasefire or after we have some agreement. So what comes next? Peacekeeping, stabilization, like renovation of our rule of law order, how we will deal with all these procedures of election, how we will deal with people who now defend our country in the battle zone or in other parts of Ukraine, because we saw Kosovo experience with KLA and with participation in political life of such people. And I'm sure that our soldiers or leadership commanders will be interested in participated in more actively in Ukrainian life development, etc., because they defend our country and actually they could have something like this, like to be recognized, to have more influence, etc. So we will need to put again in our agenda all constitutional articles that was stopped for the war period of time with human rights or other issues, because we have a list of articles in the constitution that was stopped during during martial law during the war. And again, this issue of, I don't know, to provide additional support, to provide additional help to our guys who are now, men and women who are now in the battle zone.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This part strikes me a lot. And I mean, I'm very glad to start this podcast with you and to host you in Kosovo. I hope that we're going to have other chances to talk in depth, and that will be when we have the final victory of Ukraine. Thank you very much for being with us. So we're going to start with the following podcast to talk about the regional conflicts, the frozen conflicts that are emerging in the different places in the world, and what does it mean for the security of the Western Balkans, and how we can strengthen our resilience. Thank you very much for being with us.